So recently I have been playing a ton of the MineColonies modded Minecraft, and I have to say I'm absolutely loving the pack. I think it's probably one of the most underrated mods out there, and so today I wanted to go through some tips and tricks for getting started in your worlds, because maybe that'll make it a bit more easier and accessible. I certainly wish I had a video like this myself, because I made a ton of mistakes coming through, and so today's video is to help you to not make the same mistakes that I made. So without any further ado, let's just jump straight into my tips and tricks. Okay, so first up, I just want to say it depends if you're playing the MineColonies mod on its own or as part of a pack with other mods in it. Obviously, if there are other mods, please do look into those and consider some of the advantages you can gain from using them. Today I'm going to be specifically talking about the MineColonies pack, but I might also throw in a few other little tips that are related to other common mods that go with it. But the first thing I think you want to do, which is doesn't matter if you're playing it on its own or as part of a mod pack, is think about what biome you want to live in. So we've got BiomesOPlenty running here, which are these big redwood trees. If you're playing in vanilla, you won't have this, but you will have some biomes such as jungles and dark oak that'll represent a similar challenge in so much as you'll have to clear a whole lot of wood. Now for me, we have tools in the game that are tree excavation tools, so I just have to cut down the bottom block and the entire tree goes. If we didn't have that, there's no way I would have chosen this biome. So be sure to think clearly about where you want to do that and the type of thing you're going to have to do in order to get your town built, because you do need a lot of level areas, as you can see from my town here. Which brings me on to the next point as well with the biome that you choose, which is what resources are nearby. For example, if you want to do the sandstone style of village, then living miles away from a desert is going to be a bit challenging and pretty silly. Now that's an obvious one, but obviously it makes sense to kind of look through the different builds. Like for example here, my builds, they need a lot of spruce and a lot of wood in general, a lot of cobble and that sort of thing. So obviously I wanted to live somewhere that was near a lot of wood biomes, because I've got dark oak, I've got spruce and that type of thing, and so that's where I chose to live. So do bear that in mind, and you can have a look at all the different build styles either on the MineColonies wiki, which I will link down in the description, or just images on Google, or by using the build tool, which we're actually going to come on to a little bit later. The other thing I would recommend you do reasonably early on is place down roads. You can see I've got loads of roads here in my town. I decided to have the town hall as the centerpiece of my town, and early game you're pretty much going to be forced to do the same. Having roads that are going around it has helped me to lay out my village a lot better and saved me a lot of time, because I had to take down a lot of buildings that were in the wrong place. If you have roads, it'll just make the whole thing a lot easier when you're laying out your builds. And you can see I've got these redstone markers here as well. Now these are marking out the perimeters of my buildings, and again this is something that I wish I'd known early game, because it just lets me know where one building ends and where the next one can begin. Now that just makes the whole thing in terms of town planning a lot easier, and means you won't have to take down any buildings because they've been placed in the wrong place. So I really recommend you do that. Speaking about buildings, obviously as I mentioned, the town hall's generally going to be at the center. Other buildings that are good to have centrally located are things like builders' huts. This is mine that you're looking at right here, because when builders are building things, they go to and from their builders' huts. So the closer that is to whatever they're building, obviously the better that's going to be. So having it centrally located is generally a good idea, and obviously if you build several, you might want to build them at different parts of the town, so the builder in that part of the town can build it as you grow. Also recommend that you have things like your storage nearby, and if you're doing any enchanting and smelting and that type of thing, just having all that stuff centrally located will save you a lot of time. I found there's a lot of back and forth in this game, going to and from your storage room, giving materials to the builders, or if you're taking things down, resource gathering and that type of thing, putting those resources away. So definitely having those storage areas located nearby is a big tip, and I recommend that you do that. In terms of when your buildings are actually being built by your citizens, do make sure that they're using the best tools available to them. So for example, a level 0 builder can use wood or gold tools, but at level 1 they can now use stone tools, or they can use the wood and gold with 1 enchantment on them. So obviously the better the tools they have, the quicker the buildings can be built, and it goes all the way up to level 5, where they can use all the diamond tools with as many enchantments on them as you like. So again, the wiki will be linked in the description, you might want to check that out, but having better tools is just a common sense thing and makes a lot of sense. So next up, I want to talk about farming. This is something I recommend you get into early game for sure. Now, I might be upsetting a few animal rights activists here, but this is certainly working in terms of getting me a lot of the farming resources that I need. Now, specifically, what I would recommend is you get a cow farm and a sheep farm. The reason being is the leather is going to be very useful, as is the beef, because you need a lot of food for you and also your citizens to keep them happy and to heal them if they become injured. As for the sheep, well, you're going to need a lot of wool. So dyeing them all different colours will save you on dyes. You can shear them, get all the different colour wool for your builds. Now, as such, you're going to want a decent sized wheat farm. This is not huge, but it's certainly serving my purpose, and it's pretty easy to set up. That'll enable you to breed all your cows and sheep and get tons of those things going on, of course, and potentially provide an extra food source in the use of bread if you want. Finally, I recommend that you get a sugarcane farm going early on as well. The paper is going to be very useful, and the bookshelves that you're going to need with the leather in conjunction with your cow farm to make some of the buildings and also to get your enchanting done. So those are the farms that I recommend you get into early game, and obviously the quicker you get into them, the more you'll build up your supplies of those things. So next up, I just wanted to run over some useful items for you in the game. The first one being the build tool, as you see right here, but also the clipboard and the resource scroll. So the clipboard, this is how you make it. You need sticks, leather, and the build tool we talked about, which is just 2 sticks and cobblestone. So it's really easy to make, and you should make it early on in the game. The resource scroll needs sticks and leather, and again, the same build tool. So all of these are very simple to make. Now the build tool, if we start with that one, you see when I hover over that, I get these borders of my town. Now you can expand your town, and I'm not really going to talk too much about that today, as that's not really an early game concept, but we will come on to it a little bit later. But these are the borders right now of my town. So it shows you that, which is useful, but it has a couple of other uses too. First of all, if we just right click the floor here, and then we press escape, we can back out, and we can see, whoa, this is quite a big design right here. This is a decoration of a fortress. If we go down decorations here, we might be able to find something that's like a little bit easier to see, maybe some statues or something like that. But as you can see, there are tons of different options. So here we go, there's a statue right there, and we can rotate that and see how it would look and that type of thing. We can go through all different statues here that they have, and you can also go through this way to different things to basically just show you things you can build. Now that's all obviously decorational, but really when you're building a town, eventually you are going to want to add those decorations, so that's kind of useful. But probably more so is if you've got one of these things here. So this is a lumberjack's hut. And if we just quickly go to @MineColonies in JEI, if I can spell it, MineColonies, here we go. You'll see you've got all these different huts. There's the lumberjacks, but you've also got things like the smeltery there, delivery man, sawmill, all of that sort of stuff, right? And these are all the buildings that you build in the MineColonies pack. Now, if I right click down here like this again, where it says decorations, I can go to lumberjack because it's in my inventory. I can now escape and run out of this a bit, and I can do some things with it, such as rotate it. I can also change what type I might want. So if I'm going for a dark oak build, perhaps the dark oak is what I'd go for. I can move exactly where it is in all directions like this. Now, importantly, this is a very important thing, what I'm about to show you here, which is this, which you can press plus. Now, that's important because on certain builds, some of it is hidden underground. And by having it down here, you might think, oh yeah, that looks great, and build it. But actually, you might want it to be up on this level or higher. And again, it depends on the build and that type of thing, but do make sure you at least check this. The final thing to say is you can flip designs. So I can flip it around, and where that would really be useful is if we look at something like a house over here. If the door's on one side, you could flip it and have a house next to it with a door on the other side. So, for example, here's the house that I've been building, right? And there's the door right there. So the flip button would have the house facing the same way, so the door would still open onto the street. But over here, the door, instead of being on the left side of the house, would be on the right side of the house when we build it. So there's a few useful things there about the build tool early game, certainly worth having, rather than just placing the hut itself down on the floor and hoping for the best. Now, as for the resource scroll and the clipboard, first of all, the clipboard, if we right-click it, we need to actually shift right-click it onto colonies. So basically, this is our town hall building with our town hall block, as you see. If I shift right-click, it's now registered to my colony. Now, once that's been done, if I right-click the clipboard, you'll see there's an open request here for a sword. So Ralph Chudderley, that's our guard who's living in this guard tower just over here, he's asking me for a sword. Now basically I can access this anywhere without having to go up to Ralph and ask him what he wants, and it will just show me the requests of all of my citizens in a neat little area. So it makes things a lot more efficient, and also make sure you keep on top of any requests that your citizens may have, which is important. Now the resource scroll, what you want to do with that one, go to your builder's hut. So this is mine here. Here's my builder's block. Shift right click, and there you go, it's registered to this hut. Now, for this builder's hut, we've got Ellen working on this. So basically, if I go over, this is actually Ellen's house over here. She's in her house right now, look at that. So if we just go inside here a second, and we go here and we click build options and upgrade, basically the build request has been requested or created. You can see there in chat. So soon Ellen will take this upon herself, and it will say that the build has started. There we go, she started it. Now if I right click this resource scroll, it shows me all the things that she needs to build it. So again, I can use this anywhere in the world, so if I'm out gathering resources, I know exactly what I need to get in order for her to build it. Now of course this doesn't just work with upgrading buildings. If you build something from scratch, it will work as well. Now, in terms of actually giving your builder resources when they are building something, you can right click on the builder, go to their inventory, and just simply put things in their inventory if they need them. She doesn't need a bow, so we're going to keep hold of that, but that's how you do it. The other thing you can do is go to the builder's hut, which also has an inventory, and if things are in here, then she will find them. As long as it's her builder's hut that she's assigned to, she will find these items and use them for the build. Finally, on the builder's hut, you've got a right arrow here that you can click on, and if we had these items on us, we could click these little up arrows, and that too would give them to her. So if you had an inventory full of all the stuff, you could come over here and just click all these arrows, and it would give all of those items to the builder, and that's how things get done. Incidentally, if you do build a building, or like I've just done there, upgrading a building, and you change your mind, you can cancel the upgrade just like that. Just a little side note, but I thought I'd mention it as we were here. Just a quick little tip, this one, but make sure you sleep as soon as it turns nighttime. If you don't and monsters start to spawn, they will attack your citizens, and this is very detrimental. Not only can they kill your citizens, so you can lose someone who's doing a job and maybe has built up their skills in that job, but also the following day after a citizen dies, all of your town will mourn and none of them will do any work for an entire day. Now obviously that is very unproductive and you do not want that to happen, so sleep as soon as it turns to nighttime. And to that end, when it is daytime, or if you've missed it and there's monsters there, make sure you kill them so your citizens are protected. And this is where I'd recommend you make a decent bow early game, enchanted if possible, particularly with infinity would be useful since you won't have loads of arrows early game. But basically then, if someone's attacking your villager, you can obviously do a ranged attack, because by the time you get to them, they might be dead. And again, you want to avoid that, so definitely sleep as soon as possible. So the next tip I'm going to give, I think will probably be a little bit controversial, which is fine. You know, there's different ways to play this game. And if you have your own thoughts, your own tips and tricks, please do let me know down in the comments, as it will no doubt help a lot of people. But that tip is going to be not to expand too quickly. Now I know it's probably tempting to get started by getting loads of citizens in and building as many buildings as you can and all that good stuff, which is fine. But as you expand, you are going to be susceptible to raids. So raids are where you'll get barbarians or pirates or that type of thing that will come in and will attack your town, attack your citizens, try to kill them. And as we mentioned before, that is not good news. You do not want to be losing citizens. Now, if you have these raids happening before you're prepared for them with enough sort of guards and of your own weapons and that sort of thing to defeat them, you could end up losing a lot of citizens and a lot of productivity that way. So I reckon that it's better to get yourself a town that is planned out well before you expand. It's ready to fight the raids, but it's also, you sort of know where you're going with it. You know, my town here right now, this is all done. We've just got 4 citizens. I haven't gone past that yet at all. I am going to be going past it soon, but you can see I have done a lot of work on the town before I'm looking to expand and go in that direction. And I think it's just going to be better and easier in the long run, and you end up with a town that makes a bit more sense with some sort of grid system. It's just going to make things a whole lot cleaner and easier for you. So that's my tip. Take it or leave it. Obviously, like all of these tips. And as I say, if you differ, if you think a fast expansion can be useful, let me know why down in the comments. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was just a couple little troubleshooting things that you might find useful early game. So one of the problems I was having is a builder had all of the materials they needed to build a certain building, but they were stood idle and just not doing anything for quite a long time. So if that happens, I found a couple little workarounds for this. First of all, what you can do is you right click the builder's hut for that particular builder, go to manage worker, and you can hit this pause button right here and then restart them. Now when you restart them, they restart their schedule. I found that generally almost always will fix it, and if they weren't building something they should be, they then will start building it. So hopefully that one will work for you. However, if it doesn't, you do have another option. Basically, you can also, on the manage workers, fire the worker and then rehire them as well. Now, I think I've only had to do that maybe once, and we are playing on the latest version of the pack, the latest sort of release, so there's going to be bugs and stuff, and hopefully that'll be fixed for you, and you'll just need to do the pause and restart. But hiring and firing is certainly another thing you can do. That's really the only problem I've found that I've had that has a troubleshooting issue, as opposed to it just being a bug. But again, if you have any tips of your own for that type of troubleshooting thing, let me know down in the comments. Okay, so the final thing I wanted to talk about is something that's a little bit of a pain, but we're probably all going to have to do it from time to time, which is deleting buildings. Now this is obviously a little bit of a pain when you have to take down an entire building, particularly if it's quite a big building. But that's why you want to plan things out, and that's why a lot of my tips have been about planning, because if I could go back in time, then I could have saved myself a lot of time planning without having to then take down a whole lot of buildings. However, some little tips if you do take down buildings. The first one is, if you're going to rebuild that building later, put all the building blocks in a chest. So right here, for example, we have the warehouse building. Now I know I'm going to rebuild that, and assuming I stick to the dark oak plan, which I probably will because that's what I'm doing for my village, then in this box right here is just about all the materials they're going to need. Now depending where I build it, they might need some more dirt and that type of thing, and there's also not the tools in here, but this is certainly going to be a big help, right? Like pretty much everything they need is in there. So then next time I can just delete that chest, go place the building, and give the builder all of these materials right here. The second thing to say, a bit of an obvious one, but make sure you take the building down from the top to the bottom, otherwise you're going to have to like take down the bottom bit, bridge up, take down the next bit, and so on and so forth, and that really just doesn't make sense. Now the final thing to say about this is, let's say we're looking at, I don't know, this guard tower right here, and we go, you know what, I love it, I want to move it just slightly over one block or something like that. There is an option, if you open up the guard tower hut or any of the huts for your building, to go to build options and reposition the building. Now if you do that, you can move it a little bit, and what the builder will do is come and kind of take the blocks down and reposition it. This is time consuming, obviously they are slower than we are in terms of taking buildings down. Sometimes you might find you better to just take the building down yourself, but I just thought as it's a feature of the game I would mention it, that is possible. So you can reposition it or take it down yourself and rebuild it. Bit of a pain, but those would be my tips for that. So guys, that's about it for my tips and tricks video. If you found these tips and tricks useful, if you're excited for my MineColonies series, please do like and subscribe. It is greatly appreciated. If you have any of your own tips, obviously I would love to hear them down in the comments. And also I was thinking about potentially doing a bit of an actual playthrough of a first day on MineColonies. These are just kind of tips and tricks that will get you started off, and obviously you've got the wiki link in the description. That'll be a big help. But if you'd like to see that on cam, if there's enough people asking for that, then I will consider doing that as well. But for this episode, that is about it for today, guys. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.